It's already the deadliest of the 5 Gaza wars, 2,700 killed in Gaza, 1,300 in Israel. For more, let's speak to our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Hello to you.
I will.
Doug, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken back in Israel this Monday, the second time in less than a week after touring 6 Arab nations. What feedback did he get during that trip with Arab leaders?
Yeah, I might use a slightly different word. I might say what pushback, because he did, by all reports, get a lot of strong pushback from several of those leaders. Look, he was bringing an extremely difficult message to sell, diplomatic message, in that he was essentially asking the leaders of Israel's the Arab countries around Israel to basically crack down on Hamas, or at least adopt the U.S. vision of Hamas as a terrorist group, and to essentially bring their influence to bear on Hamas, to rein in its ambitions, and to make sure this conflict doesn't blow up into a spillover into the broader region, to keep it within Gaza. And the reason that message is so difficult is because across the Arab world, let's go way down to ground level, below the high-level diplomatic talks that Blinken was holding. On the ground level, whether we're talking about the Egypt of Sisi, whether we're talking about the Saudi Arabia of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, whether we're in Qatar, whether we're in Bahrain, whether we're in the UAE, all countries to which he traveled, most of the populations there are strongly behind the Palestinian cause and have quite a lot of antipathy for Israel. So what he was essentially asking these leaders to do is to condemn Hamas, or at least adapt to the U.S. vision of Hamas. Hamas is not the Palestinians' friend, and it needs to be reined in, and that message needs to be made clear to those who would want to be dragged into this conflict. You're trying to bring that message to bear in a part of the world where a lot of people see things through a very, very different prism. And I think, I know that, a lot of the pushback that he got, say from Egypt and from in Saudi Arabia especially, is the message that, if not always explicitly publicly expressed, implicitly and behind the scenes, I'd bet a lot of money that it was expressed, that you want us to bring our influence to bear to rein in Hamas's ambitions, to tell Hamas, keep it local. Do not try to spread this, as they have said they would like this to do, to become a broader conflict that spreads to the West Bank, to Israel itself, and beyond, with Iran, obviously, as a protagonist coming into the fray with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Says, well, that's fine, but listen, Mr. Blinken, you have to hear it from our perspective. We would like you in return to use your influence to bear, as the leader of the most powerful country in the world, the United States, your influence with Israel, to tell them to rein in its ambitions in what is expected to be a bloody, brutal assault when it does come in and invade Gaza, in that ground invasion. They want, yes, a quid pro quo. They're not categorically saying that they can't use their influence, but they're saying you have to see it from our perspective. Regardless of what the leaders may think personally about Hamas being a terrorist group, their atrocities, they know that there is a strong vein of support, not just for the Palestinians, but in some cases, yes, for the Hamas group itself, among a lot of people in that region, for reasons that they try to explain often, going back decades and decades. So at the end of the day, very tough mission. But there is, I will say this, a takeaway from this visit is there's a sense that the Americans did get the message. We heard it echoed in a sense, right back up to Joe Biden, who said yesterday that, he does not think it is feasible. The Israelis should not think of occupying Gaza long-term, staying there once they move in and invade on the ground. And also Blinken saying that the Palestinians should not be forced to flee. Essentially, I believe he said this in an interview on Al Arabiya television. He gave an interview to Arabic language news in which he basically said, no, the Palestinians have a right to stay where they are. They should not be forcibly expelled from their homelands. So these are messages that suggest that the U.S., that the messages, the blowback, the pushback I said they're getting from the Arab world, that it was sinking in to the U.S. Even if the U.S. still has its clear red lines in its diplomatic language, it's not going to speak of ending the violence, de-escalation. It has to stick by its staunch support for Israel on a diplomatic level. That's the red line of the U.S. But in other ways, it is signaling that it heard the message from the Arab leaders that Blinken met with.
Are those two positions a delicate balancing act?
It's not delicate. Someone would say it's almost, they're incompatible. They're almost impossible to reconcile, at least from where we stand at this moment in time. Yes, in different circumstances, given perhaps different leaders, a different configuration of people calling the shots here, maybe they wouldn't be irreconcilable. But when you have, on the one hand, a Benjamin Netanyahu in a weakened position who's doubling down more than ever in his determination to go in and, as he says, it put an end to Hamas and any military capability that it may have today, and also to the right of him, far-right ministers who go even further and want to just basically see the Palestinians, wiped out, no Palestinian, threat whatsoever to Israel. And then on the other hand, you have the Hamas, right? Hamas, uncategorical, doesn't recognize the existence of the state of Israel, wants a Palestinian state in its place. You have not a train wreck waiting to happen. You have a complete clash of ideologies here, and they are coming frontally head on right now, which is why that diplomatic balancing act has its limits right now. It is very tough. I think Antony Blinken, under the circumstances, did a rather commendable job in trying to balance the interests, given the limits of what he could actually explicitly say publicly right now.
All right, Doug, thank you very much. Douglas Herbert, our international affairs commentator.